Note, the following video will only use screenshots when discussing this series, on account of Comcast, NBC, or other sources unlawfully taking down the video, despite me praising the product. Apologies in advance. When it comes to the height of reality shows throughout the mid to late 2000s, I don't think any show was just as captivating or engaging than Dateline's To Catch a Predator. I don't think I need to do an in-depth summary of what each episode entails, because there have been many video series and commentary tracks already doing my work for me. Potential predators enter a sting house, get exposed by Chris Hansen on nationwide television, and leave in the back of a police car. While the series only lasted 2 years, it had left such an impact, creating several parodies to even Hansen returning for a spiritual successor, albeit only for one sting operation. So the question is, why? Why is there such a steady interest on a show that got cancelled following a lawsuit almost every 5 years on this website? That's what this video will attempt to explain, and why a show like this could never be replicated again, despite its massive influence and following. One of the reasons why TCAP took off was that there was no other competition. There were several shows that were formed in the wake of American Idol and Survivor due to their straightforward episodic structure and weekly engagement. TCAP, on the other hand, is a part of Dateline, a news program where episodes were sporadically released throughout the year, meaning every episode was not only an event, but almost unpredictable. In fact, Dateline mostly fell into the hype of TCAP. Originally, the series was known as Dangerous Web, being released at the end of 2004. And while the first episode was more focused on the educational aspects of the sting, that would change with the bizarre incidents that occurred in the Pennsylvania sting the following year. And at that point, NBC went fully into the idea of continuing to catch and arrest predators with help from local law enforcement throughout the country. You could even see the transition of Hansen's mindset from being weary and shocked about the dangers of online salacious content to throwing one-liners and sarcastic remarks to the predators throughout the series. And with the show being technically news, not only were audiences being informed about the internet, albeit someone with generational misinformation, but being entertained by the sheer stupidity of the most vile people to exist today. TCAP was one of the few shows on TV at the time where viewers at home would not only be revolted by the sick natures of the potential predators, but laugh at them for either their failed attempts at lying when they got caught, to the most depraved, desperate ropes they would have to go for just to sleep with a fictitious minor. Many of the predators brought McDonald's and pizzas, but then you get guys that show up to the house butt naked, or pirate props for pirate roleplay. With TCAP, you never know what you were gonna get. Sometimes you get a rabbi, sometimes you'll see a predator get caught, twice. Or sometimes they won't come in the house and get tackled regardless by law enforcement. Matter of fact, how about we have a cop tackle a predator in a ghillie suit? Anything goes. And that's why TCAP is still talked about and discussed to this day. Seeing people get what they deserve and the realization that their lives are over. Whether it be their bizarre tall tales they tell to Hansen or even to the police, or when they get arrested and have a breakdown over it. But it's not just the predators who give the audiences at home entertainment. There are many times where Hansen and the watchdog group Perverted Justice also have their own fair share of dumbfounded comedy. The fabricated lies the decoys use to lure in the predators, the cookies and treats they leave on the table, Hansen's replies to whenever a predator lies to his face, and the non-diegetic comments and line delivery from the law enforcements themselves. But for all of the ups and laughter TCAP brings, ultimately the show got cancelled. The Murphy sting of October 2006 was the breaking point for the series for a myriad of reasons. This sting was already plagued by having residential families protesting in the streets, because I guess they don't want predators in their neighborhood? Even though the whole goal was to get them to Murphy just so they can be arrested. So already this seems self-defeating. This sting does have its fair share of iconic predators, but none more noticeable than Louis Conrad. And I wouldn't bring this guy up if he was not a district attorney. And keep in mind, TCAP is technically a news program, so Hanson's brain goes right into journalism mode. If he catches somebody that actively works for the government, that's a huge win and the ratings will skyrocket. So with the thoughts full of greed and success, the Murphy police surrounded his house early in the morning in a rushed, impromptu manner. Conrad unalived himself once finding out, resulting in his estate to not only sue NBC, but bring up the questionable ethics of perverted justice in the chat logs with the predators. Yes, at the end of the day, they were doing the right thing of catching criminals off the streets, and there was some good that came out of it. But the raunchy, enticing, and downright edgy chat logs of the earlier stings did not help PJ look good. This not only led NBC settling out of court, but every predator that was arrested for this sting was let go, and TCAP's days were numbered. That's not to say that the show was cancelled right away. There were still 3 episodes that were to release in 2007, and it just so happens that the last 2 episodes are considered the best in the series. But comparing them to the 7 episodes released throughout 2006, NBC ceased production of TCAP. The show had already served its purpose of sharing the dangers of online chat rooms and the potential predators that could be on any form. While there were laughs to be had in the second half of the series, it clearly had teetered off its educational roots just a tad bit too much. So with the show being cancelled for over 15 years, why do we keep talking about it? Well, aside from the cathartic nature of seeing predators being put behind bars and watching their lives crumble in real time, most people watch TCAP as a time capsule. A time where not everyone was fully accustomed to the infinite stretches of the World Wide Web, hence the original title, Dangerous Web. The show peaked in 2006, where the internet was really starting to integrate itself in everyday life, with social media websites such as Facebook and MySpace becoming a daily used platform for anyone with the internet. YouTube was barely a year old, and even that began to have its concerns of privacy breaches. I was only 6 to 7 years old when TCAP came out, and I spent most of my time on YouTube watching low-quality Naruto AMVs and edits. So while I wasn't affected by online predators at the time, watching the show when I was in college years later made me understand how people learned a thing or two about the internet, but the downside being in a almost paranoid view of the internet as a whole. Today, we don't have to worry too much about the concerns of the internet with so many years of experience. If anything, it's the adults that should be responsible for what their kids go on and watch, but that's just me. Another element of the show that people look back on is the fashion sense. I mean, just look at it. Look at it. The mid-2000s had a careless appreciation for fashion, and TCAP gives you a fashion show of some of the worst styles of the decade, predator or not. Even the technology throughout TCAP is always endearing. The behemoths of Steadicams and desktops, and the usage of flip phones are more intriguing to see than the smaller handheld cameras and smartphones seen in Hanson vs. Predator. Which, a personal pet peeve of mine, whenever somebody who is not informative about TCAP talks about TCAP, they usually tend to use a mix of TCAP and HVP footage, and it's really jarring to see the B-roll jump back and forth between the decades without establishing that the newer, higher-def footage is not from TCAP. For a show that was supposedly cancelled in 2007, it would be surely questionable to see someone whip out their iPhone in 2007. But anyway, this is a good reason for why TCAP can never be replicable in the modern day. You look at the various YouTube channels these days that were inspired by TCAP to go after predators online, yet they fail to understand why the show worked so well. Some of these channels don't actually collaborate with law enforcement, meaning their encounters with the predators, the chat logs, and other evidence is seen as tampered with and unusable in a court of law, which is why in 2021, EDP-445 was arrested arrested, because the guy that caught him did not go directly to the police. And some predator catchers either staged their stings with predator actors, or worse, treat it as a joke. Yeah, TCAP could be pretty campy, but they always treated their stings with formality and finesse. The program was airing on a primetime network after all. But in today's internet, with streaming websites like Kick, predator catchers will focus more on donations and subscribers to elevate their success and humiliate predators, rather than actually taking them to the police and serving the justice that they preach. And this actually circles back to Chris Hansen, who has made questionable decisions following his departure with NBC. In 2015, he worked with Crime Watch Daily to create a spiritual successor to TCAP called Hansen vs. Predator, that was backed through a Kickstarter, yet many backers did not get their rewards. The series only lasted one sting, but even with there only being one quote-unquote episode, the Predators had their own share of tomfoolery. But even still, Hansen vs. Predator didn't quite understand the dry but genius comedy of TCAP, and some of the hand-fisted moments of it doesn't quite hit the marks of its inspiration. So when that busted, Hansen tried again, doing his own thing, which didn't go anywhere. He tried to get involved in the Onision case, which failed almost immediately. Then there was the TCAP YouTube purge of 2020, where a lot of TCAP videos and channels got taken down, which was spearheaded by a former partner of Hansen at the time. To now, Hansen saying that he has been catching predators by luring them to motels and just belittling them. But honestly, it's not the same, for several reasons. TCAP came at a perfect time of internet fear-mongering, and while it could be considered that today, we were none the wiser back then. The internet was growing and people didn't know how to handle it. So here comes Dateline and their new program with surface-level education about online predators. But as 2006 came and went, the lawsuit being settled, TCAP was too well known. There were even extended versions of some of the episodes with extra footage of the sting operations and more of Hansen's witty commentary, which is why the last episode of the show only featured 7 predators, because the show was even big for supposed online predator circles. But that said, the finale gave us one of the most memorable people to come out of the show, and with such a high note, I can see why the show ended on those terms. If you want to watch a classic time capsule, there's TCAP, and good luck with that. Because the show is technically a part of the news, the show was never released on physical media, because it's the news, why would it? And for YouTube, you have to be really lucky to find a full episode. Like I said, I'm only using screenshots of the show to prevent this video from being taken down, whether it be by NBC or by the actual predators. Yes, there have been predators who were caught on the show on national television and will report these videos because they feature them, and YouTube actually takes them down. It's really absurd. But the best way to watch the show, in my opinion, is through commentary tracks or episode breakdowns. There are multiple series and videos that do just that. They seem to be the best way to view the episodes that do not get detected by the copyright algorithm. To Catch a Predator, a culturally important show of the mid-2000s, and one that will continue to be talked about for more than 18 years. I don't know how to end this video.